Well, hello. Welcome to this lesson about the classroom, an English lesson, of course. I hope you're ready to learn a few new words and maybe review some old words. I'm predicting I should have no problem describing the things in this lesson since I've spent the vast majority of my working career in a classroom. So we'll start in about 23 seconds. Let me just make sure that everything is working. Looks like we'll be able to start in about 10 or so seconds. I hope you are ready to learn a little bit. Let's make sure I know what button I click here in order to start. 1. Well, hello and welcome to this English lesson. Today we're going to talk about the classroom. We're going to talk about all of the things you would see if you walked into a classroom. Now, I'm pretty sure classrooms are pretty much the same around the world, but I should say this lesson will be about the classrooms I'm familiar with. As you know, I have been a teacher since 1997. I've been a teacher for a very long time. It might have actually, I don't know exactly, because I started halfway through a school year. So I have spent a lot of time in classrooms. I probably missed a few things, but I do have, I think, almost 37 vocabulary words that you can use when you're talking about a classroom. So once again, welcome to this English lesson about the classroom. Before I get started, I do want to mention a few things. 1, there is a live lesson tomorrow. I was hoping to do it outside. Yesterday, the forecast said that it was going to be really nice, and I thought it would be my first outdoor November live lesson, but now it says this. Saturday, cloudy, 70% chance of showers in the morning, 30% chance of showers later in the morning, UV index low, and then here's the big one, wind gusting to 60 kilometers an hour. Stuff tends to fall over when the wind blows that quickly. Anyways, we will be doing a live Q&A lesson tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to join, you can ask your English questions and I'll be happy to answer them. So look for that. I will schedule it later today. I do want to say hi to Rodrigo, John, Ellen, HQ, Luana, Baravilson, Manuel, Denika, Ibrahim, Vitor, Tim, Lolly, Key Park Mode, Eggs, Hafiez, Judith, Clive, Manuel, Adelina, Filippo, Freddie Wolf. Let me scroll down a bit here. Pedro, Kakachen, and all of the other people who are here. It's good to see your familiar names. I sometimes say it's good to see your familiar faces, but except for 1 or 2 of you, I don't actually know what you look like. But welcome to this lesson. Please remember, if you have a question during the lesson, you can use the form that will appear in the chat. There's a little link to a form. And members, of course, can hit !link in order to make that pop up. But also Nightbot will put it in the chat every once in a while as well. Please use that form. I'm sure there's questions already because I put the form up earlier than normal. And then other than that, please enjoy each other's company. What I mean by that is get to know each other in the chat. Say hi to each other in the chat. Maybe ask questions or talk about what I'm talking about in the chat as well, in English, of course. But other than that, I think we should get started. This lesson has quite a few vocabulary words. Normally, I choose about 25 to 30. This one has 30. Did I say 38? It has 37. Yep, 37. Here we go. Teacher desk. Now, you can refer to this a number of ways, and it was hard for me to find the correct way. You can say teacher desk. You can say teacher's desk. And then you can say teacher's desk with an apostrophe. I call it a teacher desk. The simple version for me is to say the teacher desk. In a classroom, you have a teacher desk, and it's usually a nicer desk. It looks more like an office desk, and it usually has a nice chair. Sometimes a teacher will have 2 desks. If you look here, this teacher actually has 2 desks. And this is the area in the classroom that the teacher works from. In my classroom, I have a teacher desk. I actually have a standing desk in my classroom. I don't like to sit. And on my teacher desk, I have all of the things I need in order to teach. It's where I put my laptop when I come to class. And I don't have a nice chair like that. I have a chair, but I should get a more comfortable chair. There are days when I do lower my standing desk and I do sit, so maybe I should look for a nicer desk at some point. But a teacher desk might be at the front, it might be at the back of the classroom. It's where the teacher will sit and work, or where the teacher will keep their things when they're teaching a class. So you might have guessed what the next slide will be. Student desk. So a student desk most often looks like this in a high school in Canada. Sometimes the desk and chair will be separate. This is all connected together. Students in my school don't actually like desks like this. They find that they're quite small. A long time ago, a student would put their textbook and their notebook or binder on their desk, and they had lots of room. But nowadays, students often have a textbook, a binder. By the way, I'll talk about a binder later, and a laptop. And desks like this feel a little bit small. You can see there's a little place underneath for students to put things if they need to. But this is a pretty standard student desk for my part of the world. Some of the classrooms at my school just have tables and chairs. And depending on what class I'm teaching, sometimes I prefer this. Tables and chairs make it easier for students to work in groups. It makes it easier. If you look at these tables and chairs, you can put them together to make bigger tables, or take them apart to make smaller tables, or even, I would even call these desks. And I think it looks like the legs, they might be adjustable. This is not a picture from my school. I wish I had tables and chairs like this. They look very, very cool. So sometimes students will have desks. Sometimes they will have tables and chairs. And it depends on the age of the students as well. I think in an elementary school, or what we call a grade school in Canada, you might be more likely to have tables and chairs. At the front, there might be a whiteboard or a blackboard. A whiteboard is probably more common now. My classroom has all whiteboards. A whiteboard is something you can write on with different color dry erase markers. I just call them markers. And then you can also erase it when you're done. I prefer a whiteboard because when you use a chalkboard, you get chalk on your hands, and then that's just not a nice feeling. What I don't like about a whiteboard is that the dry erase markers, they dry out very quickly. They don't last very long. Maybe I do too much writing in my class on the board, but when I use a whiteboard, I find you kind of have to hold the dry erase marker like this, I think, so the ink actually flows to the tip. And I do find that if you use them every day, they do dry out quickly. They do run out of ink. But yes, a whiteboard and dry erase marker. And we also have what's called a blackboard or chalkboard. We do have some of these in our school still, but not very many. We've switched over almost exclusively to whiteboards. And of course, with a blackboard, you will use chalk in order to write on it. Now, if you're in a classroom, you would call this the board, and you would call this the board. The teacher might say, can you write the answer to number 2 on the board? They might be talking about a whiteboard or blackboard. So we do just shorten it to say board. Chalk, I think, is a natural substance, but I'm sure the chalk we write with now is probably man-made. But chalk, I think, is a very soft, porous rock originally. But yes, chalk. And then, of course, you can use an eraser. When you're done writing on the board, you can erase everything. And then the next teacher that comes to the classroom doesn't have to look at all of the stuff that you wrote. So interestingly about that, usually in Canada, high school teachers move from room to room sometimes. I teach both of my classes in the same room, but sometimes teachers will teach 2 classes in one room. They'll teach another class in a different room, and then maybe their 4th class in a completely different room again. But usually at an elementary school, the teacher will have the same classroom all day. Just a little bit of a difference. So this is something that started appearing in classrooms probably about 20 years ago. This is a projector. Before this type of projector, we used, let me see here, this type of projector, an overhead projector. But a projector is a device usually that hangs from the ceiling in a classroom. You can have them on tables or desks, but because teachers use them every day, we usually mount them permanently to the ceiling, and it's connected either to a classroom computer or the teacher's laptop. In my classroom, I have a projector, and I can connect to the projector wirelessly with my laptop, and then I can project images or worksheets or lesson plans onto the screen for students to look at. So a projector, it uses light to project basically a computer screen onto a screen. And so I've used that word a couple times now. When you have something at the front of the classroom that you can pull down, and it's usually all white, we call that a screen. So you project onto a screen. Some teachers actually project onto their whiteboards now. My projector, I project onto my whiteboard. And this is a really cool trick because if you project onto the whiteboard, you can actually make notes on the whiteboard on top of what you're projecting. So if I project onto my whiteboard the conjugation of the verb avoir, and if a student goes up and writes a sample sentence, they can write it on the whiteboard beside the sample. So some teachers have a screen. This is probably the most common. Some teachers will project onto a whiteboard. And then we have something called an interactive whiteboard or smartboard. So this is, how would you describe this? The projector is connected to it, the computer is connected to it, and you can also digitally write on it. So it's not the same as a dry erase marker. When you write on an interactive whiteboard, you use special pens, and you're actually writing onto the file that's on your computer. So different ways to display things in the classroom up front. Hey, let's look at some questions. I probably should have finished that off, but that's okay. Let's look at some questions. Let me find my question form. And here we go. Let's see here. From Ruslan, hello, dear teacher Bob. How are you today, sir? I'm good. In your school, what is the most favorite subject for students and which one is the least? So some students really like physical education. We call it phys ed. That's when you go to the gym and you learn to play different sports. At our school, we also have shop classes. In shop class, you learn to build things. So some of our students really, really like shop class. We have music classes. We have every type of subject. So it kind of depends on the students. I would say the class they enjoy the most. What would the class they enjoy the most be? I don't know, it's probably phys ed, I would think, something like that. It's certainly not fourth year advanced university prep biology. That's a class where you have to memorize a lot of things. That may not be their favorite class. Let's see here. From Ranata. Hello, Bob. I have no question today. Just feel like learning a little bit from you. Thank you for being such an awesome teacher. Have a great day. Keep up the good work. Well, thanks, Ranata. I hope you have a good day as well. Let's see. From Hung. I have a Malaysian friend. We're close friends. We always chat, study together in English. He's a nice dude. Do you have close classmates? Does he keep in touch with you? So my best friend is actually someone who I met in kindergarten when I was 5 or 6 years old. So I met him in kindergarten and we have been friends since then. So my best friend is someone who, yes, definitely was a former classmate. Yeah, it's trying to think. I have a couple of other friends from university, but yeah, my closest friend is from kindergarten. From Mode, hey, Mr. Bob, are you team ballpoint or team fountain? Definitely ballpoint. Yes, not used a fountain pen for a long time, although in grade 5 or 6, they became popular for some reason. All my friends were buying a fountain pen. That's a pen where you have to dip before you write, but they actually come now with a cartridge. The one I had a little cartridge in it. Or maybe you just like gel pens. No, ballpoint pens. Red ballpoint pen for grading student work. And do you use Proctor or Invigilator? No, we don't use those. We might use Proctor. If you went to a private school, like a boarding school, that's a school where you sleep at the school at night, you stay there the entire year, you might use the word Proctor. But nope, otherwise we do not. From Oksana. Hi, how do you call a journal that keeps record of students who are present, not present at lessons? So in my part of the world, we call it attendance. So I need to do attendance at the beginning of every class. When I do attendance, it means I make sure all of the students are there. And we don't have a book anymore. It's done on the computer. But before we did it on computer, we had attendance sheets. So it was just a piece of paper with all the student names, and you would check off, and it would have the date, and you would check off who was present and who was absent. Those are the two words that we use. So now it's done on computer. I start class by saying, okay, can everyone sit down, please? Let's get started. Just give me a minute to do attendance. And then I'll just go through and I'll mark everyone present who's there, and I'll mark everyone absent who is not there. Great question, by the way. I got to talk about present and absent. Ario says, hi, how you been? It's been a while. Long time no chat. How's your downtime or break? My question is, how's school culture in Western countries? So my week was good, but I didn't have much downtime. I actually had a pretty busy week. And no, I wasn't out trick-or-treating on Tuesday. I was certainly, was it Tuesday? No. So it's midterm here. So the semester is about 4.5 months long. We've been in school for 2 months. So there are midterms. So I had to grade student work and submit it. So it's been a busy week. My question is, how's school culture in Western countries? Well, that's a good question. I don't want to sound too negative, but I do feel like students are forgetting how to study. Here's a good example. A good student will go to school all day, and if there's no homework, they will go home and they will still review what they did that day. I find students in my part of Canada are less likely to do that now. Sometimes the teacher gives homework, but if the teacher doesn't give homework and you read a chapter in a book that day, you should go home and reread that chapter. So I'm worried that students aren't working as hard as they should be in our schools. Mode says to Ario, he was just too busy this week. He posted about it on the community tab, by the way. Yeah, a little too busy. My own fault. I was a little bit behind. You know what? When you get behind, I'm sure all of you have that. And then you look at how much time you have left before a due date. Like I had to have all of my students' work graded and handed back and in the grade book and submitted by last night at 5. And I was like, you know what? I'm behind. Anyways, it all got done. It usually works that way. Let's see, from Martin. Hi, Bob. Could you imagine a classroom where all your students use VR and at the same time travel together to space to learn about space, planets, and things like that? Yes, I can imagine that. However, when I had to teach remotely, I felt like something was missing. So what I mean by that is when I'm in the classroom, if students are working in groups, I can talk to one group, but I can still see and hear what the other students are doing. I find with online learning, it's hard to replicate that. It's hard to do the same thing. So I hope when we have VR learning, it becomes a little easier for the teacher to kind of keep track of what's happening in the classroom. Judith says, hi, Bob. In your classroom, has anyone asked if you saw the movie titled Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise? Have you seen the actual movie? Is that the movie where he repeats every day, they're fighting aliens, and he lives the same day every day until he dies, and then he wakes up at the same point? Yes, I have definitely seen that movie, if that's the one we are talking about. Freddie Wolf says, Bob, are you severe in giving marks to students? So I am not a hard grader. So if students submit work and the work is of good quality, they'll get a good grade from me. But if students don't submit work, I'm not very good at, how would you say this? Like, I just give them a 0. And then if they hand it in late, I take points off if it's late. So I like it when students do the work and hand it in on time. And if it's of okay quality, they'll still get an okay grade. I think that's how I would put it. From BB, Teacher Bob, how should we call the school only for girls? Oh, we would call it a girls' school or a boys' school. Those are the two terms, especially if it's for younger students, like up to age 16 or so. You would say girls' school or boys' school. And you might even use the word all. So a girl, 14-year-old girl might say, oh, I go to an all-girls school. Or an 11-year-old boy might say, oh, I go to an all-boys school. And that's how you would describe that. Let's see here. From William, Teacher Bob, thank you for awesome classes. Teacher, can you name some of the subjects at school? Sure. I'll go by. So there's English. At our schools, we teach English, but it's actually studying literature and learning how to write essays. So it's not learning to speak English. It's learning to appreciate good novels and short stories and to be able to write well. We teach French at our school. We teach geography, history, science. The sciences split after grade 9 into biology, chemistry, and physics. We teach music. We teach, I'm trying to think. We teach shop classes. You can learn how to build things out of wood or metal. We have phys ed, which is short for physical education. We have classes where students learn to cook and to run a home. We have, let me see here. We have classes that simply help students in their other classes, student support classes. I'm probably missing something, but that would be the extent of it. Okay, I'm going to go back to the lesson and then I'll, I'm looking at Vitor's comment. That movie is too repetitive. He's talking about Edge of Tomorrow, where the same thing happens every day. They do a pretty good job of it, though, I think, even though it's a bit repetitive. So a teacher might also, a teacher might also have a TV. In my classroom, I actually am kind of lucky. I have a projector and I also have a TV, and I can connect my laptop wirelessly to the projector or to the TV. And I can connect to both at once and show different things on each screen. The reason I have that is because I teach split classes. So I actually teach 2 classes at the same time during the same time slot. In my computer class, I teach business computing and I teach computer programming. It's 2 completely separate classes. I have 5 or 6 students in one class and about 20 students in the other class. And so I use one screen. I use the TV for one class and the projector for another. So a TV is another way. And then an overhead projector. This is the older way of doing this. Some teachers still like to use an overhead projector. With an overhead projector, whatever you put on the surface, it has to be transparent. It will project on the screen. So you can actually put a piece of plastic called a transparency. You can see through it. It's like glass, but made out of plastic. And then you can write on it, and then it will show up on the screen. In a classroom, you might also see a bulletin board. A bulletin board is usually made out of cork or some sort of soft material that lets you put pins in it, and it allows you to create a display. This is probably more common in an elementary school. Well, let me rephrase that. In an elementary school, teachers often will make a bulletin board. Maybe they're learning about summer. You see it says inching into summer. Maybe they're learning about plants, and the teacher will make a bulletin board to help students learn. In a high school, I teach at a high school, it's more likely that students will do the bulletin board. They will use it to display their work. At the end of a graphic design unit, my students put their work on a bulletin board. So it's simply a board where you can display things. My classroom has an intercom that is basically a speaker on the wall, and they can call me using the intercom, or I can call the office using the intercom. So sometimes during class, all of a sudden it'll be like, beep, excuse me, Bob, can you send Jane down to the office? And then I'll send a student down to the office. It's also where the bell system is. So as class ends, the same speaker that is used for an intercom is used to make a bell sound. So it chimes at the end of class. And it can also be used as a PA system. The people in the office can talk to the whole school at once. So they could announce something like, hey, students have been good today, so we're ending school early. That never happens. But they could use it to make an announcement as well. By the way, PA is short for Public Address System. It's any system where you have lots of speakers in order to talk to lots of people. This is new in the last 10 or 12 years. We have access points in our classrooms. An access point is a spot where it's connected to the network, and so that students and teachers have Wi-Fi in the classroom. So most of our classrooms, there's a little white box somewhere on the wall or ceiling, and that is the Wi-Fi access point, or we would just call it an access point, so that you can connect to the internet. The internet has become pretty important for education. Like, it would be hard to teach without an internet connection for me. Like, as a teacher, I use a number of online tools in both my classes. Certainly, it would be hard for me to teach computer class without an access point or without access to the internet. So there is a clock in most classrooms. It's the thing that students sometimes don't like, especially if they're writing a test. They don't like seeing the clock and knowing that they're running out of time. In our school, we have synchronized clocks. That means every single clock in our school has the same time on it, okay? So we used to have just normal clocks in our classroom a few years ago. And so the clocks would all be at a slightly different time. Now we have a synchronized clock system. When something is synchronized, it means everything is at the same spot. So in my classroom, if it is 10 to 2, it's 10 to 2 in every other classroom in the school. We have synchronized clocks. I really like synchronized clocks. It's quite nice. Otherwise, students get out early from one class, but you're still teaching, and it just causes a little bit of chaos. So we do not have this in all of our classrooms at my school. My school was built in the late 70s. So I think 1979 is when they started building it. And when they built schools back then, they put in very small windows. But my school also has a couple of additions. They've made the school bigger. There's 2 times in the history of my school where they've added on to the school. And each time they added on, the windows were a little bigger. The most recent addition to the school has floor to ceiling windows in one section to let in a lot of natural light. It might seem kind of funny, but natural light is actually very good for learning. I think a long time ago, they thought too many windows would be distracting to students. But I prefer classrooms that have really, really big windows to let in a lot of natural light. I just think it is very, very healthy. It makes people happier. It's just nice. I'm assuming you have the same thing. If you have a job at an office and you have a spot where you work that has lots of natural light, it's just very, very nice. Classrooms will have bookshelves or a bookshelf at the back. Books are still very important when it comes to learning, even though most students don't necessarily go to the library and check out books. Many students read ebooks now, but it's still nice to have a bookshelf. I have a bookshelf in my classroom, and it has all kinds of French books on it for my students. So a bookshelf is a shelf where you keep books. We have something called cubby holes. These are cubby holes. We usually have these in classrooms for younger students. A cubby hole is a little spot where a student can keep their shoes, maybe their lunch, maybe when they come to school, they put their lunch bag into the cubby hole. It's just a little place where they can keep their things. Sometimes it has their name at the bottom. And I don't know where the word cubby hole comes from, but I have fond memories of when I started school. I had a little cubby hole with my name, and I could put my shoes and my lunch in there when I came into school. It was nice to have a little place that was mine. On the wall of a classroom, you might see a poster. You might see lots of posters. This is the periodic table. If you went into a science classroom, you would probably see a poster of the periodic table on the wall. In my classroom, I have posters because I teach French. I have posters explaining different verb tenses on the classroom wall. If you take an English class, there's probably posters on the wall telling you how to conjugate in the present continuous and in the past tense and in the simple future. So posters are a very common thing. Teachers like to display knowledge in a visual form on the wall so students see it all the time. There's definitely going to be a pencil sharpener in a classroom, especially if it's a math class. Notice I say math class. Math is short for mathematics. If you're learning British English, though, you would say maths with an S on the end. We don't say that in Canada, but math classes often will have a pencil sharpener. If you're lucky, they'll have an electric pencil sharpener, but most of them look like this. My classroom has one just like this. Maybe I'll take a picture later today and show you. And then if you have a class where students read quite often, especially younger kids, you might have a beanbag chair or several beanbag chairs so that students can be comfortable when they read. You would not necessarily find these in a high school. Older students would probably love these, but I think it's better for younger kids. Older students tend to find other things to do. You might think this is a good idea, and then they find other things to do with it, like throw them at each other or do inappropriate things. So generally good for younger kids, can be problematic with older students as they find other things to do with them. And then I do not have plants in my classroom, but I'm always jealous of teachers who have plants, as well as natural light. Plants are just a nice way to make the space more welcoming and to feel nicer. So I would love, if I'm not a plant person, I don't remember to water them. I would love to have lots of natural light and some plants in my classroom. I think it would make me happier and it would make my students happier as well. Hey, we're going to do members only chat. Let me get that set up and then we will, let's see here, members only chat. I will answer questions directly from members. I will have a sip of water in a moment, and I will keep answering questions from the forum as well. Hafiez says, not feeling well today, going to go early today. I hope you feel better, Hafiez. Have a nap if you can. And Vitor says too, I hope you get better soon. Very nice. Take care, Hafiez. Great. I love seeing people talk to each other and care about each other. That's really nice. Vitor says, natural light makes people happy. Very much so. And then Mode says, schools have synchronized clocks, but some countries still have daylight savings time. How ironic. Yes, this lesson will be at a different time for some of you next week. Let's see here. Vitor, how is your handwriting? Mine is a bit like a doctor. Sometimes I can't even understand. I have fairly good handwriting, although I must say, I'm more likely to have things on my TV or projector. I do write on the board, but I usually print. So you can print or use cursive. I'm not sure if you are familiar with the two styles of writing. When you print, it's very blocky letters that aren't connected. When you write in cursive, it's a flowing script. So I generally print so that students can read it. And I think my handwriting's pretty good. Mohammed, hi Bob. What do you do when or if your students misbehave in class? Thanks. Generally, I say, can I talk to you in the hall for a minute? If it's really minor, I'll just say, please stop talking or please focus on your work. I'll give them little reminders. But if it gets out of hand or it's repeated, I'll just say, can we talk in the hall for a minute? And I'll just talk to them one-on-one. and kind of explain that their behavior is not acceptable. If it continues after that, I just send them to go talk to the principal, although that's pretty rare for me. Usually if I talk to a student one-on-one in the hall about their behavior, it usually stops. From Hobart, morning teacher, long time no see. The math is difficult for the primary school children. How to improve the math of the student or your children's? So I learned math the old school way, which was through lots of repetition. And I still think that's a good way to learn math. I should also say that math came easy to me. So it was easy for me to learn math. So I'm not sure what it's like for students where it's a little more challenging. Okay, over to the chat. We have, let's see here. From Freddie Wolf, Bob, the smaller the windows are, the less cold will come in from outside in the winter or the heat in the summer. That's true as well. Although modern glass, like we put in triple pane sealed glass windows in Canada, they are very, very efficient in terms of keeping things warm or cold. So I would say if you have modern windows, it's less of a problem. Martin, Bob, in your classroom, do you prefer digital or physical books? By the way, what is more common in Canada? So here's the thing. I like it if students have an actual textbook. So that's the book they learn from. I tried using a digital textbook once, but often the textbook will ask students to answer questions, and they usually answer that on their laptop. So I find if you have your textbook and you're trying to answer, if you're trying to do too many things on your laptop, it gets confusing. Sometimes it's nice just to prop up your textbook and then answer questions on your laptop. So I like physical books. They're quite handy. And it's harder to get distracted. Students get distracted with laptops sometimes. Thanks, New Words with MP, for gifting a membership to Diego. Very nice of you. Thank you very much. Mode says, I tried electric pencil sharpeners before, and to be honest, they're not all they're cracked up to be. I like the normal ones better. I feel like the electric ones, you sharpen too much of the pencil too quickly. I think you end up wasting a lot of the pencil. It's too easy to just keep pushing it in. Lolly Lolly, Bob, do you give orders in French to Oscar and Walter? No, I don't. I should have taught my dogs how to understand French, shouldn't I? That would have been good. From Wakil over here. Hi, Bob. How are you doing? My question is, do you have Instagram? I think it's very, very good for you. I do. I'm not very consistent at posting there. I think it's ENG Bob the Canadian is my Instagram. There are videos there from my short channel, although I haven't been updating that for a week and a half. But yes, I do have Instagram. Yuri, hello, sir. From a teacher's perspective as a Canadian teacher, what does it mean for you to be a good teacher? The good results and grades of your student, respect, etc. So for me, I like it when students, after graduating, if I see them a year or two later, if they say hi to me and remember my class, and if they're doing something productive with their life. So for me, a good teacher connects with the students, and the students have respect for them for some reason. And teachers can earn respect in a lot of different ways. But yeah, I think teachers these days, you really have to know what your students, each individual student, you need to know what they're good at and what they're not good at. And you need to help them develop both the things they're already good at and things they aren't good at. I hope that made some sense. You can't just teach the class like it's all one person. You do have to take the time. Like, you need to know that this student has difficulty with math. This student is a really good artist. This student does day-to-day work well, but doesn't study for quizzes and tests if we have them. So you kind of have to know where their weaknesses are and help them become better. Let's see. Stacy in the chat. When I was a student, PE was my least favorite subject because I was not good at any exercises or sports. It is ironic that I enjoy working out now. That's pretty common though. I think phys ed or PE, that's another way to say it. Good. Thanks for pointing that out. I think usually in phys ed, you find one or two things that you're kind of interested in, right? but maybe you didn't like basketball and volleyball, but maybe you liked weightlifting, or maybe you did some long distance running. So that's the way it goes. Walter Tetois, Mo telling Walter to be quiet. Vitor, Bob is the best teacher I know. I try my best. Key Park. Hi, Bob. Do you have a permanent classroom and students take different classrooms to different classes? Yes. So in an elementary school from age 5 to about age 12 or 13, a teacher will have their own classroom and students will have their own classroom. They'll be in the same classroom all day in my part of Canada. In high school, students move from class to class as they go through their day. And teachers sometimes are in the same classroom and sometimes move from class to class. So in the past, I've had the same classroom all day. Sometimes I'm in 3 different classrooms in a day. It really depends on the schedule for that semester. Mode says, yes, the Electra ones sharpen the pencil too much, too fast. Maybe they're made by pencil companies, so you buy more pencils. Freddie Wolf, when teachers use some green markers, wouldn't that be complicated for the students in the back of the class to read what you've written on it? Yeah, it can be. I find when I'm writing on my whiteboards, I tend to use red and black. They are the most visible, I feel. Green is not very visible from the back of class. Blue is okay, but I stay away from, I don't use yellow or any of the lighter colors. So if I'm writing something important, generally it's red or black. So, Philippo, hi Bob. When I came back from Canada where I had grade 6, my English was better than the teacher's English. Yes, it probably would be. By grade 6, you're doing a lot of talking and reading and writing. That's pretty cool. Key Park says, thanks, Bob. No problem. I'm going to turn off members only chat. Thank you for being members, by the way. You are all awesome people. And we're going to get back to the lesson and try to finish this off. I do want to say hi to the 371 people watching. I hope you're learning something new. I don't have to, I was going to say I have to go rapidly now, but I think I can finish this in the normal amount of time. We'll see. Whoa. I didn't know that was the next slide. Baskets. Baskets are pretty common in a classroom. Baskets are used for a wide variety of things. A teacher might have a basket where students put their work in. Maybe students do an assignment, and when they're done, they need to put it in the basket at the front. Baskets are just great for organizing things. I use a basket sometimes when students can't pay attention because of their phone, and I have them put their phone in the basket on my desk until the end of class. I don't take their phone. I don't confiscate their phone. When you confiscate something, you take it away from someone. I just say, please put your phone in the basket until the end of class. It seems like you're having trouble focusing on your work. What else would baskets be used for? Sometimes teachers have work that they're handing back and it's just in a basket and students can come and grab it. But baskets are just a great way to organize your classroom. A laptop. So let's talk about a few things you will see that a teacher takes to a classroom. For me, I take my laptop to my classroom. We've just decided to call these laptops. We used to call them notebooks. We don't call them notebooks anymore. We call them laptops. Portable computer, maybe. If you have an Apple product, you might simply call it a MacBook. But a teacher will take their laptop, which is a portable computer, to class. They might have a bag or a briefcase. I don't have a bag or a briefcase. I basically just take my laptop to class. I used to have a teacher bag, a nice leather bag with all kinds of teacher stuff in it. But most of what I need is on my laptop now. But some teachers will have a bag, and in their bag, they might have their laptop. They might have some student work that they collected the day before that they have to hand back. They might have a lesson plan notebook and other kinds of things. I don't drink coffee, but a lot of teachers will go to class with a mug. They'll have their laptop, their teacher bag, and a mug of coffee. You can say cup of coffee if you want, but generally we call this a mug because caffeine, that's the substance in coffee that makes you alert. Some teachers require caffeine in order to teach. And often a teacher will have a lesson planner or an agenda, or they'll just have a plain notebook. A lesson planner is a book you can write in that's designed for a teacher. It probably has a calendar and other things in it. I use my computer to do my lesson planning, but a teacher might have a lesson planner and they'll open it up to, okay, Friday, November 3rd, first class of the day. Number 1, collect homework. Number 2, teach about the present continuous. Number 3, do the worksheet. They'll have a little plan for the day of the things they are going to do. Okay, so that's a teacher. A teacher will probably have a laptop, a bag, a mug, and a lesson planner, and maybe other things, pens and pencils, and maybe a scissors, and maybe some snacks. I don't know, but those would be the 4 main things. Students will most likely have a backpack, especially high school students. Although I think our kids took a backpack from all the way from grade 1 to grade 12. So this is just a really nice bag that you can have on your back where you can put all of your things. I even use a backpack sometimes. If I go on a field trip with students, which I did a couple weeks ago, I take a backpack. It's just handy. It's easy to carry. It's very convenient. They have textbooks. So usually students will have a textbook for each class. So at my school, students might have 4 or 5 textbooks. So usually they'll go to their locker. That's in the hallway. I'm not talking about lockers today. They'll keep all of their books in their locker, and they'll just take the books they need for their morning classes and put them in their backpack, and then go to those classes. But textbooks are, of course, books filled with knowledge on a specific subject. You can see here at the bottom of the pile, there is a biology textbook. This will have lots of information about biology, chemistry, statistics, algebra, etc. So a textbook usually is designed to be filled with the knowledge students need for the specific class they're taking. So often, because in Canada we have grade 9, 10, 11, 12 in high school, you will have a grade 9 math textbook. You'll have a grade 11 biology textbook. It'll say exactly what grade it is designed for. Students will often have a binder. So a binder is just a place to keep paper. It usually has, usually a 3-ring binder, and you can open and close the rings in order to put paper into it. So this is where students will take notes. They'll do their homework. They'll answer questions. This is where anytime they need to do work in a class, they will probably use their binder. They might also just have a notebook. Some students will buy a notebook, which is kind of a book of blank pages, but it's more common for them to have a binder. And lately, it's also quite common for them to just use their computer. They might take notes on their computer. They might answer questions on their computer. Let's see here, pencil case. So if you're going to have a pencil or a lot of pencils and pens and pencil sharpeners and erasers, and I think there's a compass up there even, and maybe some whiteout. Way at the far end, there's a little thing where you can correct your mistakes. You probably will want a pencil case. It's pretty common for students to have a pencil case. When they start the school year, they probably have 10 pens and 3 pencils. By the end of the school year, some of them don't have any pens or pencils, but you will want to keep all of your pens and pencils in a pencil case so that you don't want them to just fall into the bottom of your backpack, or you don't want to lose them, so you will keep them there. And you might even have a ruler. I can't see. There might be a ruler in that backpack or in that pencil case in the bottom. And students these days, depending on where you are, might have a laptop as well. It's definitely, I think pretty much every university student or college student will have a laptop. That's very common. High schools, it might be a little different. Sometimes senior students will have a laptop. Students in grade 11 or 12 might have a laptop. Students in grade 9 or 10 might not. You might be at a school where every student has a laptop. That's common as well. At my school, every student has a laptop. It makes it very nice to teach a French class. They are required to lease a laptop from the school. So they rent a laptop from the school. So when you want to do Duolingo or Quizlet or Conjuguemos or any use any online resources in a French class, they all have a laptop. Makes it very, very easy to teach. I like it. Students might use a highlighter if they're reading something and there's a particular part they want to remember, or they want to make sure that if they study it again, they can find that spot back. They'll use one of these types of markers, which are called highlighters. They put out a very bright color. Usually they're yellow, but sometimes blue or purple. And you can go over words, but you can still read them. Like, it's not like a black marker where it would cover up the word. It simply allows you to indicate something that you might want to study again later. You would use a highlighter. And then a classroom will most likely have a file cabinet. This one should have been earlier in the lesson, but definitely if you go into any kind of classroom, there will be a file cabinet. I'm not sure why. The file cabinet in my room doesn't have papers in it, so I'm not sure why I have a file cabinet. My file cabinet has computer chargers and power bars and extension cords because I teach a computer class. So if students come to class and their computer needs to be charged, I have chargers for them. And then I also have all my French games in the file cabinet. I don't have any actual file folders or paper in my file cabinet, just games. I have a lot of Scrabble tiles for French class in there that we use to play games. Hey, that's the end of the formal part of the lesson. I will answer questions until I am done answering questions. Let me see here. I do like to read the chat a little bit whenever I'm done the lesson, though. Beatrice says, the influence of a good teacher can never be erased. A nice one. Yeah, you know, if students, if they know you like them, that's helpful as well. Let's see here. Just wanted to make sure I didn't miss any member chats here. Mostly just people. Kaka-chan says, coffee is not good for the heart. Yeah, that's why I don't drink coffee, because after my heart surgery, they said you can't have coffee anymore. So, or no more caffeine. Let's see. Okay, let me get to questions. Let's see how many are left. 8 questions left. Let's get this lesson done. Barnana says, hi Bob, have you ever heard flipped classroom or other similar expressions to describe some innovative interactive teaching methods and environments? So yes, we had training on the flipped classroom technique a few years ago. The flipped classroom is where students the night before, here's how the flipped classroom would work. Instead of reading a chapter in a book and then giving students homework to do that night, instead you would ask students to maybe learn a little bit about the author and the book the night before, and then the next day you read the chapter. Or you might have them watch a video explaining a math concept on a Tuesday night, and then you teach that concept on the Wednesday. So it's trying to get students to learn a little bit about something before you actually do it. Currently, we're learning about authentic audiences for learning. That means that if you learn something, let me see if I can think of a good example. Yeah, I can't, sorry. But basically getting more people involved in the learning process than just the teacher and the students. Rodrigo says, when I was in high school, it was very easy to hide phones and play while the teacher was explaining. There wasn't a good control over it. Did you have a similar problem? No. So I have always been pretty aware of technology and the sneaky ways to use it. And so one thing that's always helped me is that, as I mentioned, I have a stand-up desk. And I'm fairly mobile in the classroom, depending on the class, but I like to walk around. I actually haven't done that as much lately, but the more you walk around, the harder it is to hide things from the teacher. But if the teacher just sits at the desk, it's easy to hide stuff from the teacher. Lolly Lolly. Coucou Bob. On average, combien d'étudiants est-ce que tu as dans des classes? So I have anywhere from as low as like 8 or 10, that's rare, and as high as 30. So generally, classes have 20 to 30 students in Ontario, Canada. The average is usually 24 or 27. 30 would be a big class, and 20 would be a nice size. but it depends on what you teach. My French classes tend to be quite small, and my computer classes and business classes tend to be quite large. But the average, I think our school even has a rule that 27 is the max, but they can go to 30. But once it's above 34, I think they make it into 2 classes of 17 if they can. So, yeah. Tom says, may you give me some names of stuff in the classroom. Yeah, there's a whole lesson of it, Tom. Hopefully you can go back and rewatch it. I think I highlighted almost everything you would see in a classroom for sure. From Peter. Hi, Mr. Bob. How are you? Your live stream is great. Your topic reminded me of a lot of things when I was in school. I don't have a question today. You have a good day. You too, Peter. Hopefully the memories of school are good memories for everybody. We'll see. Filippo, hi again. In your teaching career, do you have any memory of the best and the worst student? Thank you. Yes. So I had one student who was such a good student. Sometimes students ask teachers to write a recommendation letter when they're applying for a job or applying to go to a university. And I had a student who was such an excellent student. I wrote them a recommendation letter before they even asked me to. So usually a student will say, hey, can you write me a recommendation letter? I'm applying for a job or I'm applying to this university. For this one student, I wrote it beforehand. And the worst student, for me, the worst students are students who skip class and do that a lot. So I had a student once who out of 90, I think our semester is 93 days, they missed 30 days of class. So it wasn't necessarily that they were the worst student. They were a very nice person. They just didn't come to class. That's not good. Yeah, it's really hard to learn if you don't come to class. From Ismail, hi Bob, what was the most important motivation for you to choose the teaching career? Was it just out of interest or thank you for the time you spend on teaching? So for me, it actually took a while for me to realize, but I actually like explaining stuff to people. It's probably obvious from watching my YouTube videos. I've always just liked explaining things. I think I mentioned before when I was a kid, my cousins would come to play and my brothers and sisters, and I liked teaching them new games. So I think I've just always been someone who I really like learning about new things, and I really like explaining things to people when I learn them. So that would be probably why. From Jamal, hi Bob, I really appreciate your efforts in helping us learn more and more English. No problem. I would like to know the difference between American accent and Canadian accent. Very slight. I usually mention this when Brent came to visit me from Maine last summer. Neither of us even realized each other had a slight accent. Like, it's very easy for Canadians and Americans to speak. And even people from certain parts of America sound almost exactly the same as Canadians. Eric, hi Bob. First of all, thanks for your content. What's the difference between default and standard? I saw both at school. So the default or the standard is like the normal. So let's see, what would be a good example of default? So when you're here in Canada, when you're done elementary school, when you're done grade 8, the default is to go to grade 9. Okay, the standard is to go to grade 9. So the most common thing to do is to go to grade 9. But some students can actually learn at home, and there's other things you can do. But the default is you go to grade 9. Now, standard also has another meaning in terms of like the minimum score you need. So let's say, I'm trying to think here. Like, we have standards for our food quality. So the standard for milk is that it has to be a certain amount of purity in the milk. I'm not explaining that well, but you should look up the meaning of standard. It has probably more than 2 meanings. From Mikhailo, hello, dear teacher Bob. My question is, do you have any lessons of psychology in your school, and do teachers study it for increasing their qualifications? A little fix there. So not specifically psychology, but we are trained quite often on human behavior or student behavior and how to respond to different types of student behavior. So I would say 30 or 40 years ago, if a student did something wrong, the teacher got angry. That was the solution, right? Now we're trained to understand the student more, to understand why the behavior is happening, to try and find the root of the behavior. So let's say I have a student in my class who is from another country and they don't understand the lesson and they throw their pencil on the floor. So I'm going to talk to that student and say, you can't throw stuff. But I'm also going to try to figure out why they were upset. Like, I'm not going to say it's okay to throw stuff, but I'm also going to try and figure out, could I have designed my lesson better so they understood it better, especially students who don't speak very good English. So yeah, we study a lot. Once a year or so, we have training on student behavior and how to manage a classroom. Let's see here. Hey, that's the end of the lesson. What am I doing here? I'm definitely clicking the wrong buttons. That's the end of the lesson. Thanks for watching. This lesson will come out in a shorter version in a couple days. Please watch it or at least listen to it. It will help you kind of reinforce what you've learned today. And you'll hear how I use the words in different phrases as well. I see Brent in the chat saying, yeah, very small accent between the US and Canada. Good to see you here, Brent. Hope you had a good week. I know things are a little bit strange out there in Maine still, but hopefully things have calmed down, back to school and all that stuff. There's a live stream tomorrow. I thought it was going to be outside. It will not be outside. It will be in this room. But you can come at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow and ask your questions about the English language, and I will try to answer them as clearly as possible. You can also ask questions about me and my life, and if I'm comfortable, I will answer those. But anyways, let's wrap this up. Thanks for watching. Bye to, let's see. Mode says, the thing that this notebook has on the side is called a spiral, right? Yes. Did you cover that already? I might have zoned out when you did. Sorry. No, we would call it a spiral bound notebook. That would be the name. So you can buy a notebook, and if it has like a spring along the one side, we call it a spiral bound notebook. Brent says, very small accent between the US and Canada. Certainly between where Brent is from and where I'm from. Like, Brent lives very close to the Canadian border, and he's in the northeast part of the US. So there are some, yeah, I would say he has a very, very similar accent to mine. Different than the south of the US or something like that. Let's see here. Okay, bye to Lolly Lolly, Kakachan, Angel, Doris, Desh, Freddie Wolf. Freddie says, is learning French in Canada compulsory because the country has 2 languages with English and French? Yes. So from grade 1 until grade 9, students are required to study French. Now that doesn't make them fluent, but they usually know their colors and they know how to count. They know how to ask for directions. They can probably order food in a restaurant. So sometimes I'm a little bit sad that they don't know more. But anyways, Freddie says as well, Bob, it's been such a long time that I wasn't a student. So this lesson has been a great reminder. It reminds me of some great teachers like you. Thanks, and see you tomorrow. Bye. Thanks, Freddie. Thanks for the compliment. And I'm happy that I could remind you. Bye to Key Park, Ellen, FX, Modags again, Freddie Wolf, Teresa, Caitlin, Zeeb, Stacy, Lolly, Tisho, Judith, John, Brent says see ya, Clive, and everyone else. Gonna go now. Have a good day. I think I need to, oh, is it 9:32? I better go. Bye, everybody. See you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.